Hello everyone, Zach here from the Carnival of Randomness on behalf of our sponsor, Upsitnik & Associates. In these unprecedented times, we reflect on our future, both in the next few weeks and months, but also the upcoming years and decades. And it's time to prepare for that future. Upsitnik & Associates has been contacted by many healthcare workers, as well as old and new clients, to prepare wills, powers of attorney, and advance directives, also called a living will. All of you need these documents. So don't say you don't have any assets to speak of, no children or other dependents. Regardless of the circumstances now, you will need a will for today and tomorrow. Al Upsitnik feels so strongly about having wills and other needed documents prepared that Upsitnik & Associates can prepare your will, power of attorney, and living will at no charge. You heard that correct. No charge until the end of 2020. No hidden fees or gimmicks. Al feels so strongly about planning for the future at this time that he is willing to assist you with your future. Trust Upsitnik & Associates, attorneys for 42 years, from the Supreme Court to Alaska and everywhere in between. You can find them online, upsitnikslaw.com, on Facebook, Upsitnik & Associates, or call them toll-free 1-866-391-3299 to prepare for your future.
Hi, everybody. I'm still your incidental host on Carnival of Randomness, Rob, and Greg finally got out of the dumpster the wrestler tossed him in, so he's here. And we have Ken here.
Good morning.
Yeah, we hear these in the morning.
Well, you're
so
half
fine.
right. It's morning.
But a history lesson for you all, and all you younger people. Okay, you're not going to believe this, but in the time of the pyramids, we used to have, believe it or not, maybe 3 to 5 TV channels. Really? I mean, you did the little ask your parents what rabbit ears were. You could get Syracuse or Buffalo. But we had a little gem floating out there, and I'll always call it 21. It was XXI, Public Broadcasting. And what they brought in was a myriad of great programming, and you just watch the local stuff, whatever sitcom, everything on, and go, oh, this is a drag. Then you get Nova, get Doctor Who, get Monty Python, everything else. And we're very lucky to have somebody who's been involved with this she'll tell us how long, and hosts a show on 91.5, a classical music show. Hi, Julia Figueras.
Hey there.
All right, can you just say a little about yourself for the fans out in podcast land?
Well, music director and midday host of the classical station, Classical 91.5. But I didn't start there. I started playing punk rock. I mean, hardcore butthole surfers punk rock.
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's where I started. And then that turned into jazz, and that turned into classical. And,
Forget that Tchaikovsky stuff.
well, yeah.
That's a natural progression.
Yeah, exactly. You can't be a punk forever.
That's right.
Or maybe you can. I don't know.
You
right?
always
You tell me.
That's what music does.
You can be a classical
You
punk.
start one place in music, you end up, it's like following the yellow brick road, where you just keep going and finding different things and different things.
Yeah, I got to tell you, it was very funny because yesterday I was going through the hidden messages on Facebook. Sometimes when somebody sends you a message on Facebook and they're not a friend of yours in Messenger, that gets hidden in a second layer. And I somehow stumbled upon the second layer, and there was a message from a guy named Chad. Chad used to listen to me when I was playing modern rock at WKXL in Concord, New Hampshire.
Wow.
And he used to call me on the phone and, make all these requests. And I always honored his requests, and we would talk a lot. And here it is, umpty-ump years later. And I feel ancient now. Like he's saying, I got divorced after 22 years. Man, this guy was like a kid, basically.
It was a moment at the Bug Jar. It was a moment at the Bug Jar a few years ago, and it was Maybird was playing, and I'm talking to Michaela Davis, I'm talking to Sam Snyder, some people, and I started using the term back in my day. And I started feeling really old, because I was here the night this opened, and you weren't born yet. Because I remember my friends lived on Priam Street, and we go out, and I remember, Rosie's was the bar there. It turned into the Bug Jar, and at the beginning, the Bug Jar was a dance club. We went there the first night. One of my friends goes in, comes out, you have to see this, you have to see this. And it was all the stuff on the ceiling, and I'm thinking, I'm hanging out with people who were like 3 or weren't even like -2 when this place opened. And I'm doing, back in my day, we had Idols. We used to go, that was the punk club, right. Idols. What was Idols? Is that the singer that sung White Wedding?
No. Yeah, right. Well, but Michaela, I knew when she was in high school, and she was in the Rochester Philharmonic Youth Orchestra with our daughter, who got married in our backyard on the 6th of September. So, I've got this whole like, oh God, I'm old feeling these days.
I'm getting that more and
We
more.
can't think that way.
No,
But one thing I wanted to talk about in terms of music is I think there are artists out there that speak to us in a language we only understand. Where you find somebody, it's like, this is one of your artists, you relate to them, you can really feel like that. And I get this from your love of Bruce Springsteen, how you always go on about Bruce.
You mean me, who's wearing the Springsteen
Yes.
on Broadway sweatshirt?
How that had to be fantastic.
How was it?
I'm sure it was.
It was amazing. It was incredible. And I remember because you got an invitation to buy a ticket. You didn't get they would
You didn't have to rip open candy bars and get a golden ticket.
But they send you a link. And I remember we got up in the morning. It was the day that the links were first sent out. And I said to my husband, Peter, did you get one? Because we both signed up. He said nothing. I heard ding on my phone. And I went, oh. And I got the link. And I went in. And just because you got the link didn't mean you were going to actually get a ticket. And it was, so I picked the date. We were very canny about it. We decided we'd go early in the run when there was no snow. And, getting around New York would be more pleasant. So as it turned out, we went Critics Night.
Wow.
So we didn't even see opening night. We were there the night before it actually officially opened. But I got the link, and I remember I was sitting at my computer at work, and the thing was just turning and turning and turning and turning, and there's only 175 seats in the house. And I'm looking at my chances of ever seeing Springsteen on Broadway go away, because if I don't get in the first hit, then I'm never going to get in. And up pop 2 tickets at $400 a piece. And I remember looking at this, and looking at this, because we were hoping for like 175, and thinking, they give you 5 minutes. With 1 minute and 34 seconds left on my timer, I said, you know what? We will never get this back
Screw
again.
it, right?
Back in the day, again, I used the term, I remember I would go tell my Mom, this band's coming to the War Memorial. It'll always be the War Memorial to me. Go get tickets for us, go down to Record Theater. I remember when some band, I don't remember, they were charged $17.50, and we were debating, what a bunch of crooks.
Yeah. And I did. I hit the go button. And it wasn't until 3 hours later that I actually looked to see where the tickets were. I didn't even know where our seats were for like 3 hours. And it turned out they were unbelievably good seats. We were like 5th row center balcony, and the balcony extended deep. So we were really almost on top of the stage.
My buddy
That's
Moondog
nice.
Dave and I, we stayed at the Royalton right on 42nd. We went down to the Beacon Theater to see Jason Isbell. We did it in January.
Yeah,
so
good.
it worked out amazing. Go down, see Jason. And I've seen Jason around 10 times now. He's a fantastic
I'd love to
songwriter.
see him.
And we were going to go see him this year with Trey Anastasio. That was one of my ticket refunds, which is,
Forget that one.
first when Nick Cave, actually, I would have been going to see this week in Philly. But first world problems, we have to do what we can do. But we ended up driving back. You get into New York, we parked the car, not going to drive till we go out. On the way home, we had the mega blizzard. They rooted us through Ithaca, and I always remember it for 2 things. They had a Winnie the Pooh and a marijuana field thing where they were going to start up, and then somebody made an ice statue of Richard Nixon.
Winnie the Pooh
And
marijuana.
we just got to a snow, because I guess they were going to do for the marijuana, but Winnie the Pooh and the marijuana field. But it was quite the trip and quite fun, but that's like, I used to love road trips for concerts like that, but...
Well, you know what we do? We've got it down to a science now, where we drive to Albany, and we go to the train station. We leave the car in the train station,
Right.
and we take the train down, and then we'll get we get like an Airbnb or a hotel and stay. But next time we had this whole thing we were going to do. There's a lottery that you could do for Broadway shows, and you don't know what you're going to get. You just sign up, and they give you parameters so you can say, no, I don't want a rom-com. Yes, I want a musical, that sort of thing. And they tell you the day of the show which show you're going to see. And then there's something called Hotel Tonight, where you just book when you get there. So we were going to do a mystery day where we were just going to get on the train.
Just go.
Exactly, exactly, Ken. And just get on the train, right? And someplace between Albany and New York, we would book a hotel and Hotel Tonight, and someplace between Albany and New York, we'd find out what show we were going to see. So it was just going to be like this.
See what happens.
Yes, my mystery.
I'll do the 2 ticket frenzies I know of. Everybody knows the 1 ticket frenzy, and I was entering the lottery to try to get my friend Jen tickets. She wanted to go so bad. Hamilton here.
Yeah.
That was quite the ticket frenzy.
Wow.
And also the other one was when Paul McCartney played Buffalo. And I remember one of my friends got a ticket for $25 behind a pole, and he was thrilled.
Some of these, my wife had come up, McCartney's going to be doing Toronto, and we're going to go, and blah, 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 and it's, how much are tickets? And, $400 or whatever, some outrageous.
Yeah. It's basically, how much your tickets up? We don't need the car. We can sell it, can't we?
I saw him in Syracuse.
And then you stop and think, and I've seen some of the shows because he's on so much now. I don't know if he's oversaturated his own self, but do I want to go see that at 70, whatever he is today, or do I want to remember what it was, the beauty of him?
Well, one of them, for me,
That's a really good point.
And I have opted, no, it's not because I'm cheap, but I would rather, he's not really good anymore.
No, that's the thing. You have to be honest. There are some bands, I remember seeing some bands where I've said I'm going to stop now because I want to remember them like this. But one of the big ones for me from my dad was Yitzhak Perlman. He came here, and what I did literally, I went, 10 o'clock, I went on. I got seats in the balcony. Tickets sold out in 20 minutes.
Right.
And people asked me, what was one of your best shows? Yitzhak Perlman was just so
he's
absolute.
And I'm glad you got to see, because he can still play, but if you notice, every time he plays now, he plays more simply than he was before. So there's going to be no more big Beethoven piano.
No, he
concertos.
He played themes from movies this time. And what he did was he reminded me like he was like being a Victor Borge wannabe because he kept making jokes and everything. But he's just so good. But I mean, I would have liked in terms of, because I do love classical music, but I'm not going to complain. He wants to do that. The audience did it.
Sure.
And you're raising your hand in the back.
I would pay $400 to see Victor Borge.
Oh,
I would too.
well, not now, I don't think.
I mean, if it was...
You know what I'm playing? You know what I'm playing? It's called the piano.
The punctuation.
And again, XXI, where did I see his concerts? XXI.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. But the Springsteen on Broadway thing, because of the setting and the way it was done, and this was a one-off essentially, and ironically, 6 months later, my husband got the ding on his thing. We did not go, but we went down and met my friend Dave Beyer, who is a math professor at Barnard College and was the math consultant for A Beautiful Mind.
Oh, wow.
And he was also Russell Crowe's hand double. So when you see the movie and you see all the writing on the math, that's Dave Beyer.
Cool.
I read John Nash, but I don't know.
Yeah, and I came home from college. I was at Bard. He was at Swarthmore, and he said, "You've got to hear this guy. You've got to hear this guy. He's so good. He's going to play our spring fling this year." And he played me back to back Greetings and then Wild Innocent East Street Shuffle, and I went insane. It was like my eyes opened. I went straight to Strawberries. I bought both of those albums and was a Springsteen fan forever. And the wild part about this was Dave met us for dinner before the show. Dave didn't get a ticket. And he didn't get to see Springsteen on Broadway until almost exactly 1 year after we saw him. He finally got his ticket. And I was feeling kind of guilty because this was the guy who started me on the Bruce Road.
This is funny, too. This is some Bruce trivia in terms of Bruce and Rochester. And I was always the big MJQ CMF fan in the 70s. My parents would let me stay up on Sunday nights to listen to Dr. Demento, Rockline, all the shows. Bruce did not sell well in Rochester. It was the River. That was his first tour when he came to Rock, when he really sold well. Otherwise, I guess it was one of those things where he just didn't. Because he was more sort of regional, and I guess him and Bob Seger had an agreement where they stuck to their regions at the time, but he did not sell that well here.
No, he did not. People were walking up while he was on stage. And the irony is, I was at Brandeis at that point, so I was in Boston where he was huge. And every time he played in Rochester, I was in Boston. And every time he played in Boston, I was in Rochester. So this massive fan of Springsteen. I mean, I based an entire character on Springsteen in my acting class. I just loved him to pieces, and I did not get to see him until the River Tour.
Wow.
And it was in Boston. 2 different people took pity on me. And each had separately got me a single ticket. So I have an unripped Springsteen River ticket at home.
Nice.
And it was the first time I ever got to see him. And I will always remember it because we came out. It was very close to Christmas. And it was the first snowfall of the year as we walked out the door.
Wow.
Those big, fat, fluffy flakes right after he played Santa Claus is Coming to Town. And it was all so magical.
Right.
You could hear
That's
the
a
jingle
beautiful
bells
memory.
going on in the background.
It's true.
And then it comes around where he played the full River album in Rochester a few years ago.
Did he do that? Did he do the River Tour in Rochester?
He did it because one of my friends went to it, showed me pictures, so he did it here.
Yeah, that's right. He did.
I was at some.
Yeah,
I think I was
there
at
too.
Abilene or something that night. Some local.
Yeah, that's right. He did. And then Scott Feibush. We know Scott, and Scott and I did a road trip to Buffalo, where it was the first and the only time that he did Greetings from Asbury Park, and it would turn out to be the last big concert that Clarence would play.
Oh, really?
And it was weird because the intros came at some point, and Scott and I broke down, and we were just sobbing in our seats because we knew it, we could feel it.
Sure.
Yeah, this was it. Clarence wasn't coming back after that, and he didn't.
No.
He did. I think they played a private gig down in New Jersey, and that was the end of that.
Well, for me, one of the ones was Tom Waits. I've always, and I fell in love with him. And the thing that happened to me is I lived in Alexandria for most of the 90s. And I was in D.C. for school. Actually, I was in school here around 94, 95. Then I moved to Alexandria. And I came back to visit a lot. And Tom Waits played at the auditorium or somewhere. And I remember hearing this. The tickets were $75. And at that time, wow.
That was
but
a lot
I would
of
have
money.
I would have sold my soul.
You remember
but
the year?
I blanked.
Please,
But what I did was, so I knew he was staying at the Strath Allen, and I knew I couldn't get tickets, whatever. So I went looking for him.
Yeah.
I went looking. Yes, I did stalker him. I figured he liked to drink because I knew he liked to drink wine. And I'd love to tell the story. Well, I saw him at the bar and we hung out. But I think it's the same story. I guess the Pogues, when he was in Ireland, they went looking for him. And it turned out the great party man, the great drinker, he went to bed at 9 o'clock. So,
We have never seen Tom Waits, and he's
Never, I
totally on the bucket list. And you are a big jazz fan. You know, you go to the jazz to the
Festival, etc.
They're
Not
there,
this
right?
year.
Not this year, but
this
you know, I always see you there. And this is the one guy I wish would play the Jazz Fest, but he won't play festivals.
Huh.
I'm sure he's been
Closest-
offered time and
the
time
closest
again.
I've had, I was really blessed in terms of, this is again how Rochester is a very cultural city. A lot of people don't get that who don't live here. That for me, it was an honor to see Mose Allison live here.
Oh man, was he awesome or what?
And the thing about me was I got down there really early because, and there's a huge line, people cut in line. So literally they numbered you off. They said, you're fine, you're going to get in. It turned out I barely got in and could have a seat. He comes out, purple pants, sneakers, one of those claw hammers, starts playing. It's just, this is somebody I've loved for years. Just to see him.
Great. Yep.
My miss for the Jazz Festival, and I don't have a lot of regrets, but this was one, was Dr. John. And I was deeply sorry that we did not get to see Dr. John when he played. Because I go back to his very first album, Dr. John.
Well, you should know from None of His Willpower, too, like Dr. John.
Yep. Yeah, Don's a
Well,
big-
for me, too, another one was Booker T and the MGs.
Did you see them?
They were there. Greg Townsend told me we went down. They played a free gig.
Were they great?
They were great, and it was before I think Duck Dunn passed away, like about a year or so later,
Oh, really?
and everything. But in terms of Tom Waits, the closest I've come, Marissa Mulder did a set of her songs at Love and Cup, and I remember going down there. Tom Cohen told me they had to drive home to Canandaigua, take her to Canandaigua. It turned into one of those "Where's the road?" nights, because it can get down, especially around there, and got home, but she, I think it takes a lot of guts, obviously, too, to do that and do it well.
Yeah. I was never a big Tom Waits fan until I got involved with those tribute shows for his birthday thing, the Iron Smoke things. So I've done 2 of those. And, well, you did those, Ken, didn't you? Or
Not with Tom Waits. We've done the tribute shows. We did the tribute shows with...
Neil Young, right?
With Neil Young.
Okay.
And I think...
Did you ever do the Dylan one?
No.
Me either.
The Who Knew? I mean, actually, there was another show. I saw Dylan back in 2018 here. And that was, you talked about Never Sing Again. I won't, because... I know I've seen when he's been good and been bad. He was so on that night. I want to remember him that way.
We were talking a little bit earlier about Springsteen and the cultural depth that Rochester has. A couple years ago, I got a phone call from a friend who lives in Ithaca. Kenny, I'm coming up. There's a concert at the Eastman that's tomorrow night. I have an extra ticket. Would you be interested to go? Gee, who's playing, right? Tony Bennett.
Wow.
Oh, man.
Oh, you talk about, I don't care if my daughter was going to be getting married or whatever. You put whatever it is aside.
Right.
When are you going to have an opportunity to go see Tony Bennett?
I saw him so many years ago in Laconia, New Hampshire. He was playing up in Laconia. And this is back when I was working in Concord. And I got to meet him.
Oh, cool beans.
I got taken back. I got to meet him, but I remember I got to the end of the show, and he was working with the Ralph Sharon Trio. Mm-hmm. And he, can we turn off all the mics, please? Turn everything off.
Yep.
And he walks to the edge of the stage and unmiked, with the band unmiked, sings the song. And it was mind-blowing. It was mind-blowing. So I go back to meet him. Man, he's short. He's like 5'4".
I've discovered like Link Ray was Dickie Peterson from Blue Cheer.
Yeah, I was expecting to be looking up and saying thank you, and I was looking at him eye to eye and just thank you,
But were you like into like the Ramones and everything in the day?
Yeah,
those type of things. I still remember seeing the Ramones at U of R. This was just before I graduated. This was just after I graduated high school, and I'll never forget this night. Not because of all the vodka and lemonade I drank. But I went to see him. This was the last night I ever saw Uncle Roger, too. Because Uncle Roger, we were talking, and he was saying how he liked Van Halen's new album, which was the one with Sammy Hagar. And you never think that, how people in your life, this is the last time I ever saw Raj. And I always remember that show, and they'll go, oh, did you see the Ramones? Yeah. Well, I remember it for a different reason.
Well, I remember back in the day, as they say, when they were on Layton Avenue, when CMF was over there.
Yeah.
When I don't know, I knew Raj, like, on the peripheral, whatever, from the bands or whatever. And we went over there. We rang the bell. Hey, Raj, it's Greg and a couple people. Can we come up? Oh, sure. He just let you up. And
but they were a bunch of old hippies in the day. That was CMF in the 70s. They were hippies.
Yeah.
Well, no, but I can remember my friend Paul had secured a copy, the only copy at that time, 72, 71, whatever it was, Emerson, Lake and Palmer doing pictures at an exhibition. I got the album. Nobody in town has the album. Your brother and I, that night, midnight, whatever it was, drive over to Layton Street. We went up and we had the Spark Hicks. Does that name ring a bell?
Vaguely.
He was one of the local folks over here on Layton Street. And here we are playing DJs and, of course, having all kinds of imbibement and whatever at 1 o'clock in the morning. It was at a time when you could do that.
Yeah.
There was no security swipes and this and that.
We hung out at WSAY, too.
Yeah, right. Hey, man, I got an album. You want to hear it? Yeah, sure. Bring it
on French Road.
It was it's so funny because CMF was a community radio station when it started. And my my father actually had a radio show on CMF called Going Baroque. And he played just as you would think, Baroque music.
We see what he did there.
And that was my dad, the punster extraordinaire, the man, the king of bad jokes.
We'll have to get you into our punster.
Our stuff that we do.
Yes, the punster circle.
You see them, you see the post, you grow, and you grow.
Oh,
I saw everything back in the day when I was in Boston. I was going out at least once a week and seeing shows. So I saw the Pogues. I got really, really drunk in London with Kate from the Pogues, and they came then to Boston to play, And when we had been in this, it was this underground bar. There was a group called the Skiff Scaffs. It was a skiffle group, and they were playing.
Love it.
And members of the Pogues were on the stage, and it was this great just sort of jam band that was going on. And Kate and I were just standing at the bar, just pounding them. And I looked at Kate and I said, if we move, this bar will fall over. and so there we were in Boston, and the Pogues were over. It was off, and I went over to say hello, and I said to Kate, I don't know if you remember me. And she said, guys, she's the one. I went, what? She said, she's the one who said that great line that we always use. And someone said, oh, you mean if we move, this bar will fall over? The Pogues have been saying this ever since.
And I cannot believe it's like literally, they kicked Shane McGowan out for drinking.
Yeah.
I always look at that as, it's like in Keith Richards' biography where he says he didn't want to hang around with these guys in his neighborhood because they did drugs.
Yeah, you're right.
But I almost had the best London story. I was in London in 2010. Literally, I missed Greg Townsend played a gig at the Red Bear in London. Literally about 3 days after I left. Had this overlapped, I would have nonchalantly walked in, and it's like, Rob, what are you doing here? I decided to come to your gig. No big deal.
What a good thing to do, though.
It was so close. It would have just been so perfect.
Yeah.
But I had to go to Abbey Road, of course. You have to make the pilgrimage.
Cross the road, cross the zebra, as they would say.
And there's a Beatles store down on Baker Street, too. There's like the Sherlock Holmes thing, but there's a Beatles store.
Yeah, is there?
Yeah. Because I had to go to Madame Tussauds, which I actually enjoyed. It had like an old funhouse feel. But you go down Baker Street, obviously they got the Sherlock Holmes stuff, but there's a Beatles store right there.
Wow.
What would you want to buy from a Beatles store? Would you get a T-shirt or something? Did you get any?
Yeah.
No, I didn't go in there. Actually, there was too crowded. We were going to Madame Tussauds. I didn't want to in a way because I'm thinking it's probably touristy. What else do I need? My first album, first Beatles album was actually that 67 through 70 with the blue vinyl that I bought at Gold Circle.
Ooh. Yeah. It's weird. I have a copy of that, the double.
There's the red one and the blue one. Old.
Yeah. But I bought this blue copy, and one day I was playing it. You don't touch your records forever, right? And then you put one on, and I think it's the last side, and it's whatever's on the label. I'm looking at it. I don't know. It's like the 1967-ish era. So I put it on, and there's a bunch of 60s songs on it.
It wasn't.
So they made the pressing is wrong.
It was wrong.
And so I've got this album, and I'm trying to figure out, well, is this thing worth anything? Because it's a mistake.
It used?
I don't remember.
I actually got a Dred Zeppelin album. Yeah. Dred Zeppelin, not Led Zeppelin. It was Huey Lewis. They pressed it wrong.
Oh, I've got it was supposed to be Ministry. And I it was supposed to be a Ministry album, and I put it on. It was Joni Mitchell for the Roses. I'm like, well, that's a little off.
I always have to tell. I always tell this one John Lennon story that a friend of mine told me. I guess he met John, and he had him sign an album. He didn't look at it, so he gets home. He signed it Paul McCartney.
Excellent.
That's very
excellent.
Cool. So that's just one of the stories I have to always tell. It's my little 6 degrees of John Lennon.
I got a quick story. It's very Rochester and rock and roll, so it works out. So when I was working at Chase, they decided one day they were going to take us all out. It was like back when Chase had money or whatever. I don't know. But they said, okay, the whole department and the home equity is going to go. We're going to Frontier Field for a ball game. Woohoo! And of course, me. Can we drink?
Right. Yeah. Well,
and of course,
the important questions answered. Yeah.
It was like, is this company time or is this our time or how's this? So anyway, they said, yeah. So we prepped up before we got there, of course. And then when we get there, I'm walking down through the concession area there, and I see this bunch of people, and there's a table, and Eddie Money's sitting at this table.
May he rest in peace.
Yes, and God bless him. And he's sitting at this table, and he's signing 8x10s for $10. I don't know what he was doing in town, but in my fashion, always wanting to be in style here, I wore my orange Wheaties shirt with the baseball guy on it, right? Because we were at the ball game.
Right.
And I walked up to the table. I said, hey, Mr. Money, great. I love your music, but honestly, I don't want a picture, but I want to say hi, And he looks at me, and I was kind of standing off to the side, and he goes, I love that shirt. Come here. And he signed the shirt.
Better.
Yeah. So I
Much better.
got the Wheaties shirt with his signature.
Now, have you framed that?
I hung it up. So I got to frame it. Yeah, I got to throw it in a frame.
Put it under glass.
Yes.
That's a keeper.
Okay, I got a question for everybody. Here we've been now in, I'll still use the phrase lockdown. How long? 6 months?
March, so we're in
7
March.
months? Whatever. We know that all of the venues have been shut down and there have been no live performances and things are just starting to come back. We also know that there's been an explosion of the technology that allows the groups to video, to record, to put it out to the masses. The Little's doing it. Andy's doing it with the band. So many other people. I know Don has done some.
Right.
I'm doing my weekly watch parties for
everybody's
friends
out
to
there.
help them out.
But we've been unable to go to the venues and, for the most part, enjoy the shows. What have you all seen online that has knocked your socks off, that has really turned your head, and it has brought you to something new and something that you've really enjoyed?
Actually, to be honest,
That's a
Harpy
great
Hour.
question.
Actually, to be honest, Harpy Hour. Not a plug for Grace or Julie.
yeah,
or everything,
that's one of
But
them.
really, that was in terms of finding that gem and hearing all the. I could say. Thank Grace and you, I know more about harps than I can lie to people, actually. Plus about, wow, you have to drink every episode. You really went through some.
It was
sacrifice. Could you?
It
I mean,
was
really, you had to go
really
back and
rough.
go. You had to go back and go. I have to take one for the team.
rough gig.
But that was the one because it was really interesting, and I love. We've had the drum. I mean, yes, we can't find more intelligent musicians than we have drummers. So we have a drummer show. so we have, you know, for the kindergartners in the audience. But we had a drum show on here, and we just let these guys talk shop. You shut up and get back. When musicians start talking, like the first show with Grace, when Michaela and her start going on about and everything, they talk about harps, and it's just great seeing people talk shop and play and everything else.
Yeah, you can geek on forever on your equipment and stuff.
Oh, that's for sure. Have you ever had Sandy Giannini on?
No.
We'll talk about that. I think she'd be a great...
Well, this has been a tough year, too, also for,
Well,
podcasts
but
and everything.
she's not only a harpist, but she also plays the carillon over at the church downtown.
Oh, really? That's very cool.
She just did a fringe thing this past week.
I'm always open to people. We just leave like a trail of breadcrumbs outside the studio. Whoever shows up, it's like, hey, you want to be on?
You know, but getting back to your question, and this will surprise you, I haven't watched a lot. I work at a computer all day, and so I don't want to sit at a computer to watch things.
I do them basically, to be honest. I have a lot of friends, obviously, in music, and I put them on like Allison Moore, who I know a little bit. She does her stream every week. Her husband, Hayes Carl, does it. But like local, like Meg Williams, Alyssa Trahan, they do weekly shows, and I do the little watch party thing because I want to help them out. My friend Natalie Gellman, who until her dog got sick was doing weekly shows from California, and I just want to like bring the music and give them a little donation and help them out because I know how hard it is. But otherwise, I mean, I can't say anything's like, in terms of compares to live.
Right.
I watched some readings. I watched Pandora Box's show, and we have Virtual Fringe. But I've noticed, like, Greg, have you watched anything?
Well, I don't know. I've seen Nate Coffey do a few things that were pretty cool.
Yeah, the one thing that I've been really striving for is to see and to hear something that I've never seen and that I've never heard.
Yeah,
right.
Love Nate, love all the folks around, and I'm out there and I'm doing all that. I want to see something different.
Yeah, one of the
I
things
want to see something different. One of the things that it started with the Tiny Desk concerts.
Right.
There were so many wonderful, wonderful shows. Again, I'll bring, Michaela comes up and all of a sudden she's playing harp with, what's his name, from the Grateful Dead.
Yeah. Actually, she's on the video. One of my friends sent me a thing, said, Bob Weir video for whatever price, and she's on it. Then I was watching Down by the River from Sarah. It's like, wait a second, I know her.
And there was a U2 video that she was part of as well.
And then I get very defensive because I see some comment, wow, who's that chick?
One of the things that has surprised me is that, of all people, Robert Fripp, who is probably one of the most reserved, eclectic, unknown...
Right.
No? Okay,
Yeah, keep going.
Okay. comes out now. He's been doing a weekly series with his wife, Toya Wilcox, and they're doing Sunday breakfast, lunch, out of their home in London and England, wherever they are. And then they're also doing questions that their fans send in. Well, and it's charming. This whole series that they're doing, I am enjoying it more than if I were to be watching a concert.
You know what it is? I'll tell you.
I have to tell you, thank you so much. Now I'm going to find this. I saw Fripp at the Paradise in Boston when he was doing his Frippertronics dance music.
Yes.
And I was dancing my ass off in the front. I mean, we were right down there. We were just dancing and watching him. It was mesmerizing. And he finishes the end of the song and he says, he said, dancing is amazing. You have to learn to dance, not to the music, but through the music. Right. And he looks at me and he tips his hat and he goes back. It was like this, like, she's doing that right. And it was so great. And that's when I knew he might seem reserved, but you watch him in the King Crimson concerts. That guy's insane. It was.
Well, I've developed a little. He's not a friend, but
absolutely, I'll send you the link.
In terms of acquaintance wise, because I've seen him, he recognizes me now, Tony Levin.
You, of course.
And I saw him last time at Levin Cup. He's like, "Hey, Rob, how you doing?" And just to meet him and talk to his stories and everything, and I got to tell him my famous Peter Gabriel story, and he laughed his head off about it and everything.
All right, for those that are uninitiated,
my friend Sammy used to do security at Darien Lake and at the War Memorial. So when Peter Gabriel came, if you ever want to spot Peter, take a look around the city if he's in here, because he likes to go bike riding, right? So he goes bike riding. Sammy had to run with him, being security. So Sammy's dying, running, saying, job, I'm not going to stop. Goes running around, following Peter Gabriel. They get back to the War Memorial. There's a garage. Sam's over puffing and dying. He sees Peter Gabriel cracking up, and he just says, "What? What?" He goes, "Out of this whole tour, you're the first one who's made it the whole way." And I told Tony Levin then. He's like, "It's a great story. It's a great story."
That's funny.
Yeah. Levin is great. Peter Gabriel, I saw him at the Worcester Centrum, was it? And I was in the fourth row. It was the So tour, and so I was right there up front, and he sat down on the edge of the stage, and said something about the song meant a lot to him, and he began "In Your Eyes," and I was there in the fourth row, and it was this cosmic eye contact, and he just looked straight at me, and he sang the entire first verse to me. Wow. Now at this point, everybody in front of me is now turning around saying, "Who is she? Who's that girl?"
Yeah, whereas what happens to me?
I didn't know the man, but he sat there and serenaded me, and it was like the best ever. And then
who's that lady?
He decides to do the crowd surfing thing. Now, Brett Milano, who was a rock critic for the Boston Globe, I think it was, and this like 6 foot something was standing directly in front of me. And then we had another tall guy directly behind me, and he's going to crowd surf, and I hear, "Gently, hand over hand," and I realize Peter Gabriel is coming straight at me. And I'm really short.
Could you imagine dropping him?
Well, yes, and the funny thing is, that's immediately what I thought, oh my God, what if I drop him? Didn't mean to drop him, says tearful fan in the newspaper the next day. And so I was dying, and he came right over my head, and I did not drop him, as you know, and because you would have heard about it if I had. And I did the hand over hand, and so I am probably one of the only people who can say I touched Peter Gabriel.
I can see you haven't washed those hands now.
It was awesome.
What happened to me? My biggest claim to fame? Greg Prevost hit me in the face with a beach ball.
Yeah, there you go.
He claims he didn't do it on purpose.
That's what they all say.
That's funny.
But now, in terms of how did you said you eventually gravitated to classical? How was that journey, that path on Damascus to classical?
It was forced on me. It was forced on me. It's actually quite natural. When I was working at WKXL, I needed money. It wasn't paid well. Radio doesn't pay well. Let's get that on the table right now.
I've known over the years.
I know you think about how much Howard makes, and maybe some of these other people. Most of us don't.
One in a million.
One in a million. Most of us don't do that. So I needed more money, so I picked up the Sunday morning jazz show, and that's how I really learned to start programming and learning about jazz. And then the big crunch came, and in a big fall in New Hampshire, recession, and many banks closed, and several radio stations went out of business. And sadly for me, both my bank went under and my radio station eliminated my job all at once. So at that time, the evening jazz announcer position was open at New Hampshire Public Radio, and I did jazz, so I applied, and I got a job. So now I'm doing jazz because it's fine. And then they brought in some consultant, which is to me like radio consultants are the bane of the universe. And the consultant said, you're doing this wrong. You need to be an all talk station, and they and classical. You should be talking classical. And so they made me become a classical host.
Wow.
Because I was too popular, and they felt easier to teach me how to do classical. I did like one jazz show on Fridays, but other than that, I was.
Had you had any prior life experience or exposure to classical?
Oh, my grandfather was one of the founding members of the Rochester Philharmonic Orchestra, and then my dad had that show Going Baroque. So I had been surrounded by classical music as a kid.
Interesting.
And
hand in a glove.
And it was just not a problem. Except I had to learn a lot about repertoire, and no one told me how to program. I made it all up. I programmed my classical music, and I still do. The same way I programmed rock and jazz, with an ebb and a flow, with trying to match the way one ends to the way that one begins.
Logical ins and outs.
Yeah, ins and outs. And I just made it up as I went along. And then when they eliminated classical entirely, all music, and went solid talk because, consultants. Right at that time, this opening came up in my hometown of Rochester, New York, at this little station called WXXI, which my parents had always been big supporters of, both television and radio. And it was like,
Kismet.
I'm going home. And people say, you haven't got the job yet. I said, no, that's not true. I know. I'm going home. And I did. My marriage had just fallen apart horribly, and he'd left and gone to California on a job. I was there in New Hampshire with two little girls, a baby, a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old. And I was like, I'm packing up the house, and we're going to Boston. We're going to Rochester, New York, and here I am.
This was after the Raida days. This was because WXXI originally, when it first was born, it was Raida.
It's 23 years ago.
Yeah, it might have been.
So I remember your show Soundstage.
Yeah.
A lot, because I think everybody you had on was a friend of mine.
Well, Onstage was Onstage. Yeah, it was.
I don't research these podcasts,
What do we need? Money?
Oh, lots of money.
We were on
yeah,
that
and you know what?
Brian Lindsay
Until we open up the building, because again, lockdown.
Right.
And I mean, my Backstage Pass show it was ironic because Backstage Pass was fully booked to the end of the year. This happens sometimes with my show where it just rolls. And it rolls amazingly, and we were booked all the way through the end of the year with Backstage Passes, and I'm trying to figure out if there's a way that we can do a Backstage Pass in a virtual way where, we're in one place
I have no
playing.
idea with technology, and I've seen... But, like, for me, for XXI, too, I always just called it Channel 21, but I was always an electric company person more than Sesame Street.
Yeah,
always. With Spider-Man.
Hey,
Morgan Freeman.
guys!
And Morgan Freeman is the Count. I didn't know that. But then also that, obviously, Doctor Who, which I'm a huge fan, as we all know.
Yeah,
and Monty Python every Sunday night. Monty Python.
Right.
Or whatever.
I remember going to see one of the Monty Python movies at the Little Theater with my dad and my stepmom as a fundraiser for WXXI.
I saw Jabberwocky at St. John Fisher College. I was not a student yet, but I guess they had it there. I remember seeing it there. But I remember seeing Monty Python, the Holy Grail. I don't know where I saw it, but when the Lancelot scene came on, I think people fell out of their seats.
Oh, that
when he does the crazy charge.
I love that movie. I love that movie.
I met
so
John
much.
Cleese came to town, when we could still have events for Holy Grail, and I met him.
He was here, last year?
They just
A year or two, one of those, like early January,
recent,
February.
yeah.
Yeah, because he said he was going to turn 80, so it must have been last year.
Did you go to see that?
Yes.
John Cleese was here. We missed it. I'm sorry that we did. Well, we just watched the Princess Bride. This was a fundraiser for the Wisconsin Democrats.
Yeah, I saw they got together.
And they did a live read. But of course, Peter Cook is no longer with us, so they got Eric Idle to play. It was great. Mellage.
Wow. Yeah, I saw that. I went to the theaters to see it again when they had the anniversary, which is cool. But what do you think in terms of, this is a question Ken and I have talked about. We had Victoria Rumler on here
2 weeks ago, 3 weeks
Yeah,
ago.
I love, like, in terms of, again, one of the other hidden gems in Rochester is the Penfield Symphony Orchestra. And I would take my dad to all the shows.
We love the
and I
Penfield
love it. And I think people, but the thing, in terms of, how do you feel about, in terms of attracting younger crowds to some of these? And the reason I say that is, you go there, it's a mix, I think, but like in terms of Penfield, a lot of older audience. In terms of the RPO, like the Christmas shows. But there has to be, I'm sure, you see the young musicians at the Eastman, there has to be interesting
It's a
classical
long.
here.
You know what? They were asking the same question 150 years ago.
Yeah.
This has been. It's always the same question in classical music. You're nodding, Ken. You know this is true. And I think it's also like jazz. I think that you come to it. There comes a
That's
point
how I
where you
did.
don't want to hear the noise. You don't want to hear noise. Now you want something else.
For me, it was the exposure to it at such an early age. I was 5 and 6 and 4 years old, and my family is musical. My grandfather's a player. My uncle was a composer and a player.
What does your grandfather play?
Accordion. He is a fascinating man. We could actually do an expose on this guy, that he is so fascinating.
Really?
And I've got and I have all of the material and the documentation and so on. He played every theater organ in the Rochester area for the silent films back in the day.
You know, I wonder, did he play the Regents Theater?
Oh, I'm sure he did.
Because my grandfather was the music director at the Regents Theater.
They must have known one.
They
another.
had to
Bob
have known
Seger
each
at the
other.
Regent Theater.
His name was Lou Pericola. I mean, not that it would mean anything. I'm sure
All the sources are gone now.
the sources are gone, and that's the thing. That is one of the pieces that's been on my mind. But at any rate, coming from this musical family, one of the first things my father ever did when I was still a very young child and my sister was just born was to build a Heathkit not even a receiver, a Heathkit amplifier and a big speaker and a turntable,
Right.
so that they could play the 78s, and then the 33s were just coming out. And I would sit there on a little rocking chair with my sister listening to Tchaikovsky and to Beethoven and to Schumann and to Handel and the Messiah. And I, at 5 and 6 years old, I'm conducting the Hallelujah Chorus. So it's a really early age that I was introduced to classical music that never left.
And back in the day, again, there's that phrase.
Yeah.
But very long ago, when Stromberg Carlson, the radio station, etc., they actually had books of a syllabus that all the schools had, and the RPO would play on the air, and they would study the syllabus based on what the RPO was doing, and it was deeply tied in. But in this day and age, music of any ilk and art classes of any ilk are the first to hit the floor.
Yeah.
I feel like for me, in terms
extras
of
or specials.
In terms of classic, too, Lives of the Great Composers, that book drew me in really quick.
That's a great book.
I
That's
tell
a super
everybody.
good book.
And also you learn the whole idea that they go away from the theme, then they bring it back. You learn the structure of it as well.
Right.
That's where I got into it.
And the problem is that we're not getting good musical education in the schools.
Yeah, I want to know my
Julie's-
musical education. I don't think we even had when we had one nun who came in, played a couple things on the guitar, and that was it. We had art class, but it would go away. It was in the basement, but we'd have it once a month. We'd do things with fabric crayons, and it would go away.
I
So we
remember
never
did a
had
thing.
one.
We did a thing. We actually went to the Eastman. I don't know when I
Well,
was
that's
Yes.
what I
great
was
it
going to
was.
say. We were picked up by the buses.
Yeah.
This is when Howard Hansen was the director at Eastman School.
And
They
you're
were
sitting there
and-
and you're getting exposed to this stuff and you get it.
And they're
Sit
still
there-
doing it.
Do they?
They still do it. Well, not recently, but they still are doing it. I was actually, when our daughters were in Churchville Twilight, our daughter was at in elementary school, I took a day off work so I could be one of the mom monitors.
Yeah, absolutely.
And ride the bus with
Yeah,
the
and they would
kids.
have. I would take my dad. They would have the rehearsals like for the 4 hours in the morning. Go to, and I take my dad down there. But they took us once to the Philharmonic, the Eastman or something. And it's way long ago. I don't really remember.
But you know, they just it became something that was auxiliary and not needed. And ancillary, I think is the word.
That's why
I'm
I'm a big supporter of Girls Rock Rochester too. Even I upped my donations this year because
good.
You know, they started. They did. I think they did. Amanda told me they were doing an LGBT thing for kids in the summer.
But, you know,
so I was going to add more.
This is like my big one of my big rants is this removal of music, because sometimes that's the one thing that will keep the kid.
Right.
I actually have a friend that I worked with for a time at WXXI, and she was in the band in a city school. And the band director then would move. Eventually he moved to West Irondequoit, and he was the band director for our two daughters, Steve Beamish, wonderful man, oboe player, super great, and band was at the end of the day. And she said to me, it was the only reason why I never went home, why I stayed in school.
There was actually a friend of mine. A friend of mine told me he hated school, but the only thing that spoke to him was the band stuff, and he drummed
and ditto for
else, and he
art
stayed.
classes. Yeah. Right, exactly. Ditto for art classes.
I think they're missing the boat with all that, because if you look into it, music and art, it's a different level. You know what I mean? It's like you're thinking differently, you're emoting differently, you're feeling things, you're looking at aesthetics, you're looking at, you know what I mean? It's more abstract. And I think it keeps kids from just going home watching TV or
it's
the
like
nonsense.
theater. It's like I'm very involved.
outlet.
I'm very involved with theater, and like my friend Mario was a school without walls and everything. In terms of seeing these kids from school without walls and everything doing theater and being involved in all this and Shakespeare and everything, it's like an outlet for that type of thing, and I think people need that type of thing. Obviously,
I went to Greece Arcadia, and when I went to Greece, it was one of the top school districts in the country, and we had a phenomenal chorus. Ralph Zucchino was our choral director. We had a phenomenal band. We had an orchestra that's really good. A terrific theater department. Terry Brennan was the teacher for theater, and we did all of this, and it was great. And when we were looking, my husband and I were looking, or we were living out in Churchville, Chile, for where to buy a house. We started by looking at all the school districts that had strings programs, not because our kids were going to play string instruments, but because if a school was going to invest in that, then they were probably investing in other things as well,
That's
other
true.
good things. And we ended up for many reasons in West Irondequoit. And it was wonderful, terrific art classes. The orchestra, the wind ensemble was phenomenal. Casey Springstead runs the wind ensemble. You know, we got really lucky, and our girls went through the whole route. They did the Rochester Philharmonic Youth Orchestra.
Right.
You know, they did all county. One of them played on From the Top, which was really great. Yeah. And I look at that, and I see where my now young women are and how they think and what this gave them, and I think we're just missing. I'm with you. We're missing the boat here.
And also a thing, Mike Murray and I have talked about this a lot. We've talked about, look at the society. Just go online after this and you'll get depressed. People arguing about this, taking sides. Everybody hates everybody. There's no civil discussion.
Shut up.
Which is why I post the funny stuff, because why bother, right? You know.
Yeah.
But the thing is, Mike Murray and I were talking about this. Like, we've known people for decades. Their politics might be far apart as possible. You get down to a show, you're all pals, you're all laughing, you don't care. It brings you together.
That's right. And when you play in a band or an orchestra, you learn to work together as a group. You learn what that means to be an ensemble, to sing in a chorus, to be one.
So I have my shirt that looks exactly like a MAGA shirt, but it says, "Make polka great again." And I would see people like staring at me, and then they go, "Oh!" They come up to me, "Oh, that's awesome!"
Rob living on the edge.
But nobody ever I've never seen anything but positive vibes from shows I go to, and I've actually said how did I make a lot of friends? Because all we do is we'd end up at every show, wait a second, you're at this show.
Yeah, sure.
Or you become like a little community, especially like with the local music scene.
Yeah.
I miss that.
And I have musicians who know me. I don't know them.
Try dancing the polka. It's not
And
easy.
when we go way back into the question about what have you seen,
Right.
it's the thing I miss is I don't like having that wall. Because there's always that fourth wall, the wall of the computer. The
I
wall
get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
And
Yeah, I'm going to take my dog out to poop, and they're playing, and I'm going. But the one positive I'll say, like my friend Natalie Gellman, she's in California, and she answers the comments right away. You feel just a little bit of almost like a friend there in some ways, especially during really uncertain times in March and April when you couldn't do anything, and you'd have to, like, if you were going to go to the store, like, got my mask, spray my hand, run in, get out of there.
Yeah.
And you would have like a friend you would talk to and you sort of, keep up. But otherwise, yes, there is that isolation. And my introvert side loves it, but my social butterfly side is going, come on, get the vaccine.
Well, you know what? That's what I was just going to say. The whole isolation thing, I'm really concerned, kind of like paranoid-ish about, it's getting a little Black Mirror.
yeah.
Everything is, well, hey, we can just eliminate the office entirely. Let's just have it.
That's happened a lot with but that actually went back to 9/11
How's
because
that going to help? You're going to lose a lot of the experience.
Well,
of
what
working.
happened, one of my friends said, my friend Sean, he said the one thing about some offices, they did this during 9/11, so they're aware. But what I'm seeing from my line of work, a lot of places are closing because what they're saying, we're just going to lay off people, quote unquote lay off, and other people can work from home. So that's the thing I'm seeing,
Yeah, we're
unfortunately.
doing a hybrid at WXXI. So everybody, the announcers, everybody are going in. But we go in for short days. So I'm doing my checking in of music and that sort of thing at home. And then I go in and do my radio show. Now, my husband is a press officer now. He was the news director at XXI, and he's now a communications officer for the University of Rochester. And he's gone to work, I think, once, and that was on opening day. This season, he works from home, and I think, I love what I'm doing because I don't have that lost time.
And I remember sending you a
about.
message when this started going, because I was very interested. We were closed down for months, and Mike Murray with a whole lot of shaking. Obviously, Steve Litvak with his show about how is this going. You were saying you were home, or like he's afraid, like so.
Yeah.
I got this.
And so I love it because I get a sense of time of Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and I do get to see people in the building, and slowly people are coming back and working at WXXI. Membership department is for the most part back and cooking away, and the PR folks and the arts. So, people are slowly flowing in. I don't know what things are going to look like.
I will always say, though, too, I always had my Paperboy money. I donated to XXI. I got my Doctor Who mug where you put the coffee in the TARDIS finishes.
Yes.
And every year, that was the thing when my dad would go to the JCC and he had his last year of dementia. I've chronicled this about getting bashed over the head with plates, unfortunate episodes. But you would turn on your show and he would just be wrapped in it and just peaceful, and he loved it.
That makes me happy.
And I would tell him, be good, and I'll have her announce your birthday. And you won't get an ice cream.
Okay, so this is the weird thing about radio. The weird thing about radio is you don't know who's listening, and you don't know what the impact is. So when I get this message from the guy, Chad, from KXL, I didn't realize at the time that I would have this huge impact on his life. Years later, he's still listening to alternative
people
rock.
do,
He
though.
gave me a couple of links of really great stuff to listen to. I didn't know that, and there have been these moments. When I was doing jazz, and in New Hampshire, and I want to say I don't think it's Herbie Mann. Who's the jazz flute player? Is that Herbie Mann?
Yeah.
So I had this Herbie Mann version of Amazing Grace, and I played this, and then I followed it up with something, and my phone rang, the listener line rang, and I picked it up, and it was this listener saying, "So, I was just at Concord Hospital. and I was with my mother and she died. And I got in the car, and I heard you play this Amazing Grace by Herbie Mann, and I want to play it at her funeral. How do I get it? And I broke a rule. I actually taped it for her, which you're not supposed to do, but I knew the record was out of print. She was not going to be able to get this, you know. But of all the things to be told, you know, it's like this solemn moment of, I just played it because it was beautiful. Mm-hmm. It never occurred to me that at that moment in time, it was the one thing someone had to hear.
And you would see, he would be, like, I would take him to the Penfield Christmas, I would take him to the RPO Christmas concert, the Penfield Christmas concert, and like at the Penfield when you do the sing-along, and he always go into the JCC, he loved the Hanukkah suite especially, but he would sit, and he would be my dad again for that while. You'd see him singing along and happy and everything, and it wouldn't be the person, you know, could be, you know, the Jekyll and Hyde, especially, you know how dementia is and how progressive. But he would be it would be these moments, like with him, he'd be my dad again. And going to the RPO and everything. So that was like, and that's what music does to people and everything. That was always really good. And the thing, too, when I would hear things, like I'd hear Fantasia on Dream Streams, and they'd go, you know, Ray Fawn Williams. And he wouldn't know who the hell it was, but I'd be like pulling over in my car sometimes, going on my phone. I have to remember this artist so I can go get it.
I find some great records when you go trolling, you know, to Goodwills and stuff. I have a Zither album.
Excellent.
I have, what else do I have? Well, this goofy Hawaiian one, which is funny because it's got a blonde on the cover, you know, like those old 60s, like, you know, those suggestive, you know. And you're obviously not Hawaiian.
That was hugely popular back then. You know, the
John Ho, Tiny Bubbles.
John Ho and the
Tiny Bubbles.
Quiet Village by, what was his name now? His name just flew out of my head. But that whole Exotica.
Yeah.
The Hawaiian Exotica.
And you find weird stuff that nobody... I have this it's like a 10-inch
Martin Denny, excuse me.
Okay.
Martin Denny
was
the guy, way back.
But I found this, I think it's a 7-inch or 10-inch, whatever. But it's like Swiss, it's Swiss music. It's that clarinet, 2-beat oompa thing.
Right.
And the cover, they're all dressed in the regalia, and it's like, and somebody got rid of this thing, and I put it on, and it's just, you know, and it's just like, all I can think of is like, I'm just going to tie somebody in a chair and make them listen to this over and over.
I've gotten into world music a lot during the shutdown. But then I remember, like, one of my favorites I put up, and I'm thinking how political things are. I put up Peter Tosh. I love Peter Tosh's Mama Africa. He's got a song called MAGA Dog, and I'm thinking, nobody say this is MAGA. It's the song of you know. But I got into really world music, and that's how music's like a gateway, a good gateway drug. Yeah. In every way, but Julius, thanks for being on for this thing and enjoying
thanks for asking
and we'll
me.
do it again if you clowns want to come in, Julia.
Certainly.
You want to do this again? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, depending. I mean, I'm always saying I will hope for the best. You never know. Hopefully, things are going to go better and everything else.
I look forward to that day. I want to get back to that place where there isn't that fourth wall.
Even like the idea. Too. Remember the idea though. Like if you're going to go to the store or a restaurant or everything where. I'm going to go out and I'm going to make my go to our good old Avino, which I've gotten takeout from. Right?
Yeah. Right.
So you go, I'm going to go say hi to Jeannie and, you know, go out. Now it's like, well, I got to get my mask on. I got to go get, you know, takeout. It looks like they're operating in a doctor's office. Oh, by the way, he'll have the chicken. I'll bring the chicken out.
And there are half as many tables available.
Half as many tables, and it's going to get cold. And then, obviously, live acts, and we don't even want to go this way because I'm just hoping. It's all you can do is hope for the best, do what you can.
You know, for 35 years of my career, being in the food service, restaurant sales industry, I can't even fathom how these folks today are even keeping their doors open like they are.
No, and that's what I call. We don't understand.
Tip of the top.
It's numbers to us. We live,
absolutely.
But it's the human cost. It's the human cost of people's lives, livelihoods, and nobody could have predicted.
We were the first
this year.
We were the first. We jumped on that to-go movement like nobody's business.
You did?
Yes.
With dinners at home and so on.
Oh, yeah, you were going crazy. You were going all over the place.
Yeah, and you all saw it.
I know, absolutely.
Because I call it Corona Carryout, and I had a whole series, and we would do 2 a week, usually one down price, one up price, and we did this Corona Carryout, and it was the best. And we tipped really
Oh,
high.
we
always tip well, but we especially tipped well because these people, were giving us a sense of normalcy.
Yeah,
and we. And my son-in-law is the kitchen manager of the Owl House, and so
one of my favorite places.
Mm-hmm.
I use it as an example. The one time my friend Marissa and I went there, we would have our monthly dates at Owl House. So we go there, and it was a February, and I just remember I used this example. We went there. We come out. It's one of those Rochester days where the weather, so we can't find our cars. So I crawl up to Easton Alexander. I go to the little theater to go see Ben Morey, Katie Morey, and play. And I'm just thinking, the reason I brought that thing up was that I had the freedom to do this.
Yes.
Whereas now they'd be canceled, you couldn't have it. But I started with the vino. The only funny one I had was Simply Crepes. So shout out to them. They were very good. But in Schoen Place, trying to find a place, you had to call, trying to drive around till they came out with it because there's so many people out there was really. Then I'm waving and I'm going, hey, I could be just some guy in a white car stealing my food because I said I'm in a white car out here. Hey, are you Rob? Yes, I am.
But I'm with you, Ken. I mean, these folks, and they got creative and they got help from the state. I have to say, the state waived the. This is a passion, right?
Well, it is, and I think that there was so much confusion within the industry with the rules changing so quickly, and I felt so bad for these folks that they would become complicit with everything. They would become, they would bring their businesses in line with all the rules, and then everything would change.
You would have the thing that they joke about, but with the wing thing, where some places didn't have kitchens, they didn't have that or whatever.
And quite frankly, I learned something new because the governor had come out and said that no, in the stipulations that they signed for their liquor license, every place in the entire New York State has got to serve food. I mean, we've been in enough bars.
Right.
Did we know that?
Believe me, I worked
to eat, right? Now I'm thinking to myself, this is not necessarily.
No, believe me, one of the funny things was at Monty's Corner.
Oh, wait, what I was going to say was that, when you walk in, you see Slim Jims and
chips,
eggs and chips that are on, is that the food that he's talking about?
No, Monty's Corner, we would get constant, especially during the World Cup, we'd get droves of people, but they would call us saying, do we serve food? And I used to say, no, we serve people. Because we would point out, we thought about maybe doing a partnership with some of the street carts out there, but we would just say, you were allowed to bring food in. We never complained. But no, we don't have a kitchen. We don't serve food.
To serve man.
Well, you know what? And these places that are now, like Julia said, are having to serve to half of their capacity with all of the 6-foot seating and so on. I know enough of the business models of the restaurant industry that it's just not sustainable.
And I did. It's like last time I was out at Love and Cup, I think what I ordered takeout, it came to $9. I just gave them a 20, and I said, keep it.
Yeah. I mean, turnover is how they make the money. If you can turn over, keep the place packed, and you can't now.
Right.
Well, there are a lot of places. Avino is one that
they do 10 out, and everything.
They have a strict time allotment on your table. And part of that is to keep things safe, but part of that is also because that's the way you can guarantee your turnover. Yeah. No more 3-hour dinners.
We do what we can, but the thing I always shout out to Janine, because I've known her since I think 2005, and I took my dad there every year for his birthday dinner. So he passed away in January. His birthday's in May. So I figured, heck, I'm getting takeout anyways from Avino. So what does Janine do? She knows it's my dad's birthday. She sticks a dessert with candles and happy birthday to my dad in there. And it really got me. But, we do what we can. Try to, understand if you're working too. Some people aren't. You try to help, do what you can. True. But, on that, thanks a lot for being here. And we're going to, in the vein of classical now, where can we find your show and everything? We have to do plugs.
Classical 91.5. So it's 91.5 on the dial. Or you can go to classical915.org and stream it. And I go on noon and I leave at 3. And Brenda is in from 6 until 10. Then it's performance today for a couple hours, and then Mona steps in at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. She's there till 7.
And then XXI, obviously, is everything we watch. And I've been going on your face, and also the RPO was having those shows at 6 on Sundays. But I've been going on, and we had Grace's. We'll see about if there's more Harpy hour, but Grace is in Denver right now. So.
Well, and you know what? In August we had a 5-part series of the concerts from the Society for Chamber Music in Rochester, which co-artistic directors Juliana Athade and Eric Baer. And a tip of the hat to Eric Baer, who played our daughter's wedding.
There you go.
We solo oboe to bring her on and play
That's
her
awesome.
off. And but we just did that, and we're doing our best to really connect with, and Harpy Hour is another example, to connect with and our local
Community,
music.
sure, yeah.
Yeah. And
That's the
support
thing,
our
and it's really,
community.
and thanks for that too. It's like a lifeline. Music has been my lifeline during this whole thing, during the crazy times I've had the last 5 years, during this year and everything. You know, and even my dog likes it. My dog just sits there and waves.
I think it's the one
Mine
thing
too.
that also holds this whole group of fools together in this room.
I mean, a lot of
It
times,
does.
a lot of times, like you were saying, like not going home and after working on the computer all day, and like after a lot of gigs, especially rock gigs, I drive home with the classical stuff on because I don't want to hear
I do
any more
too.
jangly crap.
Now, and it's funny that you should say that because it's the other way around
It
for me.
brings you down.
I am playing so much classical
Right.
music, and when I go home, I'm listening to new classical CDs, and I'm categorizing and I'm working with classical. So I am so inundated with classical that I'm listening to RUR
Right.
and BER in my car. And by the way, the other day, in one of the great all-time album-oriented rock moments, I turned on the radio as I was going to work. I turned on the radio, and Scott Reagan on Open Tunings played New York Serenade by Bruce Springsteen.
Yes.
Oh, and it's so long.
And that's like the thing is, Ken and I have said too. What would we have done during a normal summer? We run into each other. Oh, hey man, how you doing? Where you going next?
Where you
And we'd
going
be out
next?
like
Where you
5 days a week,
Yeah.
making
Where
the
you
town,
going
going
next? I
everywhere.
miss that.
Praise, yeah.
And I miss that.
Killing me.
You know, and every now and then I'd have to back up, especially with my dad. I wasn't the same as I used to be. But that was like in terms of talk about, and I'd make my pilgrimage to Marge's every year. We'd go see each other at the little, where you going now? Well, I'm going to the spirit room. Where you going to go now?
You know, or even where our friends, for example, this evening from 5 to 7 at the Little Cafe will be the Jangoners. Little plug for the cafe and for the Jangoners. You know, and it's to see some of my friends that are going to be there too that I haven't seen, that we almost have to go through a reintroduction. We almost have to go through a
Well, I see Brian Williams shopping at
breaking of
Wegmans
the
at night all the
ice, you know,
time.
to get through.
Yeah.
You know, that it's been
Yeah.
6-7 months, you know, seeing Scott. I haven't seen Scott. You know, you go from the ridiculous where you're, you know, joking and having a wine and having a coffee 3 nights, 4 nights a week to now. You know, there's a
Yeah.
6 month
First time I saw
period.
Danny Deutsch again
Yeah.
at Apple. And the thing was, I would see some friends, we'd go, no, don't hug me, get away from me.
Yeah, you know, how are we going to do it? Are we going to tap elbows? Are we going to bump fists?
I do plague hug. You know, they learned there was like a, no, it's called the plague hug. It was
Plague
back when there was the plague where you do like a hug or you blow a kiss from this far.
Oh, okay.
And
Because
that's
it's a
been
real
hard.
thing.
I miss hugging.
Yeah.
It was a real big deal to hug my daughter on her wedding day. That was it was really.
And you think I don't want to get into it, but I do know like one of my friend's uncles passed away. They couldn't even really have a funeral
Yeah.
and all that
Yeah,
stuff,
yeah,
and
no,
stuff like that. And that's all.
That's sad
You
'cause
know,
we lost a few good musician friends, and I felt bad. I couldn't go.
Right.
you know.
We lost some family members
Yeah.
and some close family friends, and it was just, it's unacceptable.
It's been brutal and that.
But let's just muddle through, okay?
Yeah.
That's all. We can just muddle
It'll
through.
get better, and we still have each
Yeah.
other, and we have our music, and
We have, you know, all it does bring us. I think that's how we all are connected.
Yeah.
Well, us with Doctor Who too, obviously.
Yeah.
And I would like to point out that on the upside, I'd like to congratulate the Rochester Red Wings for their undefeated season.
There you
Yeah.
Yeah,
There you go.
I love that. I was making jokes about that all year. Well, there's no like for like some teams in baseball. Well, it's June and the Mets haven't lost yet. They're not going to lose 60 games this year.
Yeah. Well, I'm a Red Sox fan, and we're going to lose.
Well, they
this year.
they are
worst team in baseball.
It's amazing how they've fallen, but you know what are you gonna do. But we're gonna end. I think you would appreciate this. If you've never heard of Leah, we had her on. She's a Pipa player, and it's a ancient Chinese instrument, and she gets those fingers going. and she's really talented. And well, in times when we can go see things out, go see her. But this is I'm going to play her song from her new CD, O's Pipa Nomad, which you can get from her. Just send her a thing on PayPal. She'll send it to you, and really soon she'll even sign it and.
Yeah, she's around. She's available.
Yeah. Oh, I talk to her all the time.
Yeah.
And she actually played at the Little recently. But I'm going to play a song, and now I want everybody to know this. I'm playing this song because we're in Rochester. It's getting in autumn. It's going to start coming down. This does not have political connotations, which I would never have to say. It's called Snowflakes. But it's Rochester. You know the snow's coming, and I'm sure it's all about the snow falling and everything else. So
I'm sure it is, Rob.
But these days somebody's gonna call and complain and say, "Hey, what are you doing?" But thanks a lot, Julia. Thanks all you. Come back. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.